The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, we will go ahead and get our webinar started. My name is Thad Stott, and I am representing the EdTech department, the Department of Educational Technology, and with me is Nicole Xiques, who is an instructional designer, and she has been with the system. Nicole, I don't remember, is it 5 years, or is it longer than that?
No, actually, it's actually almost 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So,
Oh.
yeah.
All right. Well, Nicole's been with the system for 8 years. She's an experienced tenured ID here, and it's great to hear from her. And she has a lot to show us regarding Canvas and just some fun little interesting tips and tricks, things that you might not really think about until you need it. And Nicole is definitely an expert in the area, and so it'll be good to hear from her. And Nicole, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Like Thad said, my name is Nicole Xiques, and I'm an instructional designer at the system. I work primarily with the Chicago School, more specifically around a couple of programs, the BA program, the CMHC program, and I'm also in charge of our online student orientations. And so thanks so much for joining. I wanted to take the time on the webinar to go over a little bit about what is instructional design, because some people might not know what instructional design really is, and then talk a little bit about instructional designers and what they do, and then expand a little bit more on that in what else can we do for you in regards to your program, your institution, and so forth. And obviously we have EdTech as a partner as well, and there are many things that they can contribute to as well. So if it's something we can't do, we would obviously recommend EdTech in some sort of way, but I'm going to specifically talk about ADDIE. And then from there, we're gonna go ahead and jump into Canvas and just give you some tips and tricks on completing some tasks that you can do on your own without reaching out to your instructional designer right away, because these are some things that you can probably do on your own that you might not be aware of, or maybe you are, but it's something that you can at least practice and learn if you're in a time crunch. And that way you don't have to fill out a course maintenance form and can actually do it within your live section on your own. And so if you have any questions, I did want to point out there's a questions area. Thad will be monitoring that. So please feel free to write them in that box. And if Thad can't answer it, I will, and we'll do our best to really just make this as engaging as possible. So let's get started and talk a little bit about instructional design and what is instructional design exactly. And so really the process of instructional design, it identifies the skills, knowledge, information, and attitude gaps of a targeted audience, and it creates, selects, or suggests a learning experience to close that gap based on an instructional theory and best practices from the ID field. And so while technically the role of an instructional designer within the system doesn't follow this exact process, that is what an instructional designer does. That's what the instructional design process encompasses. And so pretty much we focus really on design, development, and implementation, and the analysis and evaluation phases we don't really touch upon here, but it's important just to show you the process in its whole, so you realize what is capable from your instructional designer. So I'm going to go into this ADDIE process. That's what it's called, ADDIE, analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation, and just briefly touch upon what that looks like. So from an analysis standpoint, you're really defining the requirements and specifications for a learning experience. So you're really trying to see what the need of your student or your learner is. And so let me see something. Can you guys see everything okay? Can you see the screen okay?
Yeah, we're seeing okay. I was I was
Okay.
thinking that if it's easy, better if you are able to. I mean, I should
Oh,
say.
this presenter view. There we go. Yes, I can.
There
Is
we go.
that a little bit, is that clear?
Perfect. Yeah, that looks great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, great. So back to analysis. We're really like figuring out what the need of the learner is. And that's done by conducting a needs assessment. We would identify and describe who that target population is, obviously who your learners are, who your students are, what are the characteristics of the environment of that learning experience. And then obviously also analyzing, any of the existing technologies and their use within the instructional environment. And this is where you would like figure out, the design of your curriculum. And it's really the beginning stages of really identifying what your learners need and all of the different areas that apply to that need. And so once you have an analysis from there, once you know really who your learner is and what they need to learn, from there you begin that design process, right? So you design a lot of the content, the materials. In our example, this is where we're creating those course maps. We're really mapping out what it is the student needs. We're creating rubrics, we're creating videos, any of the content materials that will be used within the actual lesson. And then from there, we will take that map, we'll take that design and that storyboard and go ahead and develop it. And typically, this is really the fun stuff for us. We get to map and create what we mapped out in the design phase. And so we get to just create any tutorials or any videos and anything fun besides obviously just the content we can develop. And this really is the fun stuff for an instructional designer. So once everything is developed, it obviously is the final product is within Canvas, and then you move into the implementation phase, which is where the learning happens. This is when your courses go live and students are beginning the learning process. And if this wasn't in an education setting, this would also be a time for kind of like a train the trainer. And we would then train people who would then train other people, and it's like a domino effect. But for the purposes of our organization and for the affiliates, it's really when students will then get the live course and begin going through all of the modules and all of the content. And then once you are, in the implementation phase, once that is passed, you go to an evaluation, and really you get to assess the success of the learning experience. And there's different types of evaluation, and you all are educators, so I'm sure you're aware of a formative evaluation and a summative of evaluation. And, formative can be ongoing feedback throughout the process. And, you can do check-ins little by little, and that could also even be your assessments. And then your summative evaluation would be feedback all the way at the end. And it can be a test of everything, right? Like a final exam, or even a survey at the end, asking what they enjoyed, what they liked, what they didn't, and so forth. And from that, you would then repeat the process all over again, beginning with analysis based on the evaluation to revamp, to revise, and to recreate some of the materials that might not be working for your students. And so that's really the ADDIE process in a nutshell as a whole. And so before I move forward with that, if there's any questions, obviously feel free to ask. But so now that we know like what the process is, what instructional design really is all about, that's that's where we come from as IDs. What can an instructional designer do? Right? So again, keeping in mind the organization and your institutions, we obviously do course development. We work with SMEs and instructors to create new courses and revised courses. We also work on student orientations here within the system and based on the affiliates, and that can be mostly online within the Canvas shell. We create student orientations. Also, specialty courses that are not specific to your program. We work on any type of course that perhaps your affiliate or your institution, excuse me, is needing, or your program is specifically needing. That's when you would reach out to the instructional design team. More specifically, we wanted to talk about some of the projects that we have worked on. So there was a Smart Sparrow pilot course where we used adaptive learning modules with the Smart Sparrow vendor, and we tested out how using adaptive learning within courses was beneficial to the student. And we're still continuing actually a Smart Sparrow, well, not Smart Sparrow, but an adaptive learning pilot to see if that can be created in-house. And so that's something that's completely out of the realm of course development, but still something that we can do. We also have student and faculty research shells. So specific programs really want their student and faculty to have a lot of resources available to them. And so some of our IDs have actually created Canvas shells for their students and faculty to go in as a resource. And then colleges of law, one of our IDs is working on accreditation and curriculum planning. So like I said in the beginning of the ID process, there's analysis. And so the ID here is really working on analyzing what the students are going to need and how the curriculum needs to be developed. And so they chose to have an ID help them in that realm. And then there's also one-on-one consulting for program-specific needs. I work with a lot of different programs, and some programs might need some guidance on revamping, their templates or their the way their courses look, and they want it to be very program-specific. They might need help with using specific software, while IDs do that in specifics to a program, and perhaps they work with an ID. Obviously, ed tech can do that as well. But there is one-on-one consulting for whatever you need. Feel free to talk to your ID about what it is that they can help you with to really revamp or really do whatever it is that your program might need. We also offer workshops. Ed tech and ID are obviously in collaboration with this. And here's a webinar and a workshop for you guys that you're attending. And finally, some programs have ProctorU depending, and so I know an ID has had some experience setting up some exams with ProctorU. So this is kind of like what they do currently, what we do currently, and there's still room for us to grow and still room for us to meet the needs of your institution and your program. And so with that, what else can we do? So we can help with faculty development. So if, say, you would like to create some tools, tricks, tips, learning about Canvas, coming in and talking to them more about the course development. I mean, this is something obviously that we're offering even right now in this webinar, but if you want something specific or you want to create a tutorial or some sort of learning material for your faculty, it's something that we can create for you and work with you on. Also just professional development in general, which again, this webinar is touching upon, and anything that you want on your own that you want to learn about, you can definitely reach out to the IDs and set up meetings to really discuss anything that you really want to learn in more detail. We can evaluate some of your instructional materials. So if there's things that you're using that perhaps are not in the courses or that you want that are in your courses and you really haven't had the time to review and you'd like our advice or our feedback, that is something, again, that we can provide. outcome alignment, if you need help with, you know, your outcomes and you're really stuck on, you know, how can you align them? What assessments can you use to actually determine if students are mastering that outcome? Things like that. That's what else we can do. And then obviously rubric building, if you need help with that, obviously building it within Canvas. That is something that I know I've recently done with some of my programs, is building those electronic rubrics. And I know another ID is really good at rubrics, Tracy Dice. So this is really, in a nutshell, based on what you guys do, what we do, how else we can provide for you, and really taking advantage of that, really realizing that your ID is a resource, and being proactive in reaching out to your ID specifically if you're in touch with them, or you can reach out to your program chair who will then be in touch with your ID. And then our director of instructional design is Gia Graves. So if there's anything specific that your institution or program is wanting, reaching out to Gia as well, who will then let us know, and we'll set something up. So do we have any questions on this? Awesome. I think we're good. We're moving right along. And so again, I want this to be useful. And so if we don't use the whole time, it's not, you know, I want it to be short and sweet and you guys get something out of it. And so with that, I would like to go into Canvas, because I know for myself and other IDs, and even with instructors or SMEs, there's so many moments when perhaps something wasn't done within the course, and you might not really know how to edit it yourself, or you know, you're trying to get a course maintenance form done, but it could be something that you can do on your own. And I just thought it was great to just go ahead and go through a few of those items so that you can just do this on your own and not worry about having, unless it affects your master, unless there's something in your master course that needs to be changed, which is fine, you can at least complete it within your live section so that your students aren't waiting for you to, you know, waiting for this change to be done. And if there's anything that I'm missing, like, I'd love for you to just put it in either the chat or in the questions, is can you show me this or that? If there's something that you've been wanting, either Thad and myself will hopefully be able to show it to you. But these were just some that I think were, I've come across that I thought were beneficial to show you. And so I'm just gonna go into our standard ID template, and just show you kind of some things. So the biggest thing that I think has been an issue in some of my courses is kind of like around the due dates and kind of like these file uploads. So I'm just going to go into an assignment here. So if this was your, obviously this is a template, so it doesn't have specific content. But if you were, you know, you got a message and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't, there's no way for the student to submit something. I don't know why, like they can't submit an assignment, something happened. They can't really submit it and I don't know why. So this would be your assignment, right? This is your assignment listed out. As an instructor, you do have access to edit the assignment. So you'd edit the assignment. And this is really where all of your options are. So it could have been that this file upload wasn't selected and rather something else was selected, which can just randomly happen. And so the biggest thing is to make sure that your file uploads are clicked. And this also just refers to Turnitin. We still have Turnitin, but it's not like a separate entity. It's within the assignment. So say you didn't have, you wanted it to be a file upload, and then also you didn't have, Turnitin enabled, and you wanted that to. Again, all you do is click it. This is really the only two things that you really need to have checked. And also the biggest thing is sometimes from the submission type, it would be no submission. And so that there's no option for the student. Somehow that happened. I don't know how, but it happened. And so really you just want to make sure it's online, your file upload and your enable Turnitin submission is done. And then you go ahead and you click save. And that should take care of that fix. This is also where your due dates are, right? So when you're worrying about a due date or a due date is incorrect, and I know it might be tedious and hopefully it doesn't happen for multiple assignments, but really all you have to do is go here and click on the date, click on the time. And I'm not sure if anybody else has this issue. I know there's some issues with the timing. I'm in East Coast time, so I have to set it to the time that I want for the central location time, so for central time. So I always put it at 12:59 a.m. because then when it goes into the course, which is normally on central time, it's at 11:59 the day before. So it'll fall for that Sunday at 11:59 p.m. central time. So those are the two biggest things that I feel that I kind of get some emails about, and there's a little frustration there. And really, they just have to go into this little area. You can see here that you can change the points there, and that's pretty much it. You're not going to really be touching too much else within this area, right? So you'll go ahead and you'll click save, and everything should be all ready to go. Another thing I want to show you is some programs do have electronic rubrics. Some don't. So if you do have an electronic rubric, and say an electronic rubric was not added to the assignment, you'll be able to add it yourself. So this is so that it's in your speed grader, right? So that you as the instructor have access to it when you're grading. So there's nothing listed here, right? There's nothing there. And you would go ahead and you'd click on rubric, and you would then click on find rubric. I see a question, so let me answer it before I get to it. As far as available dates, what about available dates? So I don't technically use available dates. Those really shouldn't be filled out because they give you a limitation, unless you specifically would like it to be for a set amount of time. And if that's the case, you can go ahead and just at least put an end date on how long you want to end it to. Say there's, you don't want them to see it after a certain point or a certain time, you can absolutely do it, but typically the dates are completely open for the entire course. But you can do that if you decided that you no longer want the student to see it. You can just go ahead, and I wouldn't do an available from. I mean, you can, but you can go ahead and do that, and then it would block it where the student wouldn't be able to access that after a certain standpoint.
Nicole, doesn't that feature also, isn't it handy for sort of planning your entire course out at the beginning of the semester or before the semester starts, so that these assignments or things can pop up when you want them to, kind of on their own? Is that an effective use of that feature?
Yeah, that's a great feature too. I mean, typically, like I said, because in settings it has your start term and end of term. It's already automatically open the entire time, unless you don't want a student or you don't want them to see specific assignments at if say they need to complete something first before they move to a second assignment, that's when I would use something like this as well. Because automatically, if you see here under settings, I'm sorry, I'm just going to show you. If you see under automatic settings, it gives you your start and it gives you your end. And so the students have that automatically without having to put those parameters on that specific assignment. It's really only if you don't want the student to see it, if they're completing something first, or they had a limited time and you really want them to not have it. But your due date will give them that, that as well, where they're turning in something late, right? So, but yes, I'll go back to the rubric. Sorry, I saw that one question. So let me see. So yeah, so for instance, for the rubric, so it's going to be in two different places. So for a written assignment, it's going to be on the bottom here. So we're going to go ahead and add a rubric, and we're going to find a rubric. And so if you notice here, we're in this course, and so whatever is in this course will be added here. However, at the TCS education system level, that is where all of the rubrics are housed. So we would go ahead and click on the TCS education system level, and it's going to take a little bit because if you see it as 171 rubrics, what you would do is you would go ahead and pick the specific rubric you have, right? So say we'll just do the BA psychology discussion rubric, and you'd scroll all the way here and you would click use this rubric, right? Use this rubric, and it will automatically show up here. You can, yeah, so it would automatically show up there, and then if you go to add another rubric again, it's now already housed within the course level, right? So you're not going to have to go back to the ID. I'll show you what I mean. So say for discussions now, I'm going to show you a different way to add the rubric, because for written assignments on the bottom, for discussions, it's up here on the right-hand side. Here's a rubric that's already housed and it was already attached, but that's not the rubric I want, right? I want to use the rubric that I just used. So we'll delete that rubric using the delete sign, okay? And we're going to add the rubric. And again, we go through the similar process. And if you see already, the discussion board rubric, if you notice, is listed again in the ID course now. We don't have to go back into the system. And then we would just go ahead and use the rubric there. And for the question, what is a rubric? Yeah, so a rubric is a way of assessing if your student completed an assignment based on different criteria. And so TCSPP uses rubrics for discussion questions, for written assignments, for journal entries. Different programs have different rubrics, and it is definitely something that if you don't use within your institution or within your courses or programs, I highly recommend, because it is great for you to assess how the student is actually completing that assignment, and they're actually, you know, understanding the concept and completing the outcome. And then it also helps you with grading. And so a lot of programs within TCSPP have their own specific program rubrics. And so if you don't have them and need help with that, again, something to reach out to the ID team with, and we can help you with. And then also if you don't have electronic rubrics and it's something you're wanting, again, we can input them within Canvas and then start using them within your courses. Let me just go back to this assignment because this is a template and I don't want to use it entirely. So yeah, so those are some things in general that I feel are pretty big that you can do on your own, and something that you again would let your ID know if it affects the master and needs to be completed within the master course. But this is something that you can do on your own within the live section. And the other biggest thing is hyperlinking, right? Like, so if you have a file, if you have something that you want to add within a page or an assignment, some people don't really know how to accomplish that. And so you say, for instance, this written assignment rubric, there's nothing linked there, but you want to link the document. What you do is you would highlight the written assignment rubric where you want that hyperlink to happen. And you'd click over here on the right to files, and you would upload a new file. You would choose a file, and I'm actually in CMHC's rubric, so we'll use theirs. And we're going to go ahead and just pick their, a rubric, and I'll delete it afterwards. We'll click that rubric. We click open and upload, and there you go. Now when you hyperlink it, it has the weekly group assignment rubric, and so when you hit save, right, and you click it, it automatically is downloadable. And then you would, again, if you were using the same electronic rubrics, you would attach the same rubric down there. Let me just delete that really quickly. So those are a couple of things that I find would be useful for you guys to be able to accomplish on your own. Let me go into a discussion question and just show you a couple of things also that could be beneficial. So again, everything is when you edit the actual assignment. So if it's an assignment or a discussion, really, this is your nooks and crannies here. So it has very similar features. The biggest thing here sometimes is, again, just making sure that the options are corrected or selected, excuse me, the way you want it to be if it isn't. So if, for instance, allowed threaded replies isn't checked for some random reason, going in and making sure that that's checked, and obviously that it's graded. The only other thing that I've seen some people do is click this users must post before seeing replies, so that they don't copy other answers or don't use other people's questions, but it's not very common. So, I mean, you can use it if that's something you absolutely want, but and it might be based on what your program decides, but that's the only other really thing that you would kind of use here. Group discussion, that's if this is just a discussion question, like you've made small groups and it's just like for a small group, it's not for the entire class, and then you'd have to actually input, students. So I don't want to get too complicated. That's stuff we would hopefully set up for you. This is just minor things if it wasn't working or if it wasn't graded. And, that's pretty much it, making sure, again, the due date and what have you is really there. The other thing I do want to point out too from, let's see, from the discussions, right? If we wanted to hit a reply, is using, the upload media, record media. This is a great button if you want to go ahead and actually, record something and use a video instead of just typing. That button is something that I would definitely recommend you guys, using in general and trying out. Yeah. And I'm trying to think, that's really what I had as far as some of the major things that, you could just do on your own really quickly that seem to be an issue right away that needs immediate attention for your students. And it looks like, I don't know if anybody else has any other questions about what else you can do that you might have issues with and you're waiting for your ID to do. So if you do, please ask it. But those are really the biggest items that I think instructors have some challenges with. And you know, it's so important too, like this is your help. This is your help, and you can search the Canvas guides. I mean, I definitely recommend, you know, kind of what are you looking for. So Susan asked, how do you get the rubric uploaded? So when you attach the rubric to the assignment, then it is then it is ready in SpeedGrader. So that's why you need to make sure the assignment has a rubric attached to it, an electronic rubric attached to it, because then once it does, let me see, and that's what I've been told. I don't. Let's just do this, right? Use rubric. Oh, well, there's no submission, so I probably would need a submission. But because you have that rubric attached, you can just enter the points from this rubric within SpeedGrader. But that's a great question. And so really guides, which is here, this is, you know, your help, you know, you click on search Canvas guides, and it's a great place to start to get, you know, to just really search whatever it is you're looking for. You know, if you click on guides, they even have just like a generic, like I'm an instructor, right? And they have different topics that can really just help you answer some questions that you might have and you can kind of do on your own, and just kind of explore more and more of what it is that you need. And then if it's too confusing, or you get to a certain point and you really have a question for your ID, that's when you can then possibly even ask them. And again, we're obviously here to answer any of your needs and be there for you. We just want to empower you as well to know the LMS, to know Canvas, and to get familiar with it. And you know, just feel empowered yourself to be able to maneuver it and do some things if we can't get to you as fast as we'd like, really, at the end of the day. And so we're really here to be a partner. We're here to be a collaborator. We're here to just really give our ID and adult learning experience. You guys are obviously the experts in your subject matter, and we're here to just help you take that knowledge and take that information and really put it into a course so that the students are learning the best way that they can. And really that's it. And so if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to take them. And if you would like me to do a little, I've thought about doing a little write-up of some of this stuff. If you can just in the chat, not in the questions, if you can just let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, like a little job aid of some of these little things. I'd be interested to know if you would like that to have. And so if you would, definitely write it in the chat box, or email me personally, and I'd be glad to put something together for you. But yeah, that in a nutshell is just really empowering you for Canvas and as an instructor, and really learning more about the ID process and the IDs in general. Carrie, okay, great. I'm gonna write your name down. Thank you. Awesome. Well, Thad, I don't know if you have anything else to add. I don't want to keep anyone like longer than necessary, because I appreciate you guys taking the time to just join us and be with us for this time.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. That was awesome. Very, very helpful information. And I hope that everyone here can feel a little bit more empowered as they tackle their own courses. And yes, I would like to emphasize what you had said and tell everyone to please reach out to us if there are any questions or needs. And we would also, we'll hang out here for a few minutes if there's anyone who would like to, ask some questions or run through some things that they might be stuck on. And if you have a question that you would prefer to ask verbally, just because it's hard to type it out in the question box, just raise your hand in the little attendee list thing. You can click on the raise your hand, and we can unmute you and open it up so that you can ask us verbal questions if that's easier for you as well. But in the meantime, like I said, we'll hang on for a little bit. But I would like to officially say thank you to Nicole and end the recording here, and thank everybody for joining us, and we will see you on our next webinar. But please, yeah, stick around if you want to see if there are any other questions or comments that come up. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.